Good afternoon, good evening, good grand rising to all that is joining us today. I am Dr. Coach K, and I am the urban global critic. And what I do is talk about the things that the world is going through, the consumption of life and lifestyles, how we move through it as game changers, how we move through it as champions, how do we come together as a collective, as well as communities and cultures, and how to manage all of this diversity and biodiversity with the dimensional and multidisciplinary, even the low vibrational and low frequency in regards to moral code, ethics, and integrity. So today we're going to delve into this big complex called The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison. The textbook we're working out of is by Dr. Raymond and Dr. Layton. And we're talking about the the prison complex, and how the United States have became the world policing force, and how we took over these ideologies of law enforcement and peacemaking through imprisonment, isolation, violence, and tough on crime. In reality, we should be focusing on restoring and repairing the planet and the environments, picking up where all the slumlords and all the abandoned territories and neglected territories, not to price and put a cost on living, but to be good stewards over the planet, since this is the planet the world has claimed to be the only habitat or place that all living species are able to survive in the universe. This is kind of like the perfect place to live, this planet of ours. We could be biased, of course, but as you can tell, there's something special about planet Earth. I think it's more than just the positioning and location, how she is positioned in the solar system. I think it has a lot to do with her consciousness, who she is as an entity, a terrestrial being, her consciousness, her feelings, the way she has been determined and relentless, and just the way that she's composed herself through all the atrocities and wickedness and evil that's done to the living residents here. It seems has been very invasive and violent, but yet she has governed all living in her as a champion. Over time, 4 billion years, she has provided a home for all the living, and that's pretty special. So let's delve in and see how we can be a solution and not a problem in our conduct, in our interaction with the planet and with each other. So I won't have any music to back us up, but I am going to focus on this lecture coaching session as a mentor and as a leader in the communities and a spiritual advisor. I'm going to also perform some forecasts and projections using mathematical systems as equality math and calculus or infinite mathematics, geometry, algebra, algorithms, and business math, as well as arithmetic and problem solving, to create this new language I call social mathematics. and not only social mathematics, cultural mathematics, and also how they discuss astrophysics and chemistry and quantum physics and quantum mechanics. I am going to also delve into building a meta analysis and my own theoretical framework into social chemistry, social physics, and social astrophysics, and social quantum mechanics, and social quantum physics, social communications, everything that we can think of that interacts with the planet, each other, as we are living organisms, living beings. So whether it's terrestrial, extraterrestrial, or just humanity, or the biosphere, or the biological of the bio diversity, we are here, and how to coexist, and how to perform on our highest self and of excellence, quality care ethics, and how to be balanced with each other and the ones we love and the ones that are still transforming and changing to their higher selves, and how to interact in those processes and progress. So let's begin. So I'm going to start reading because I like to go through the textbook and then bounce off the ideas through brainstorming. Instead, the U.S. built a record number of prisons, and currently more than 70% of the inmates in the nation's prisons or jails are not there for the first time. The last time the Bureau of Justice Statistics did a major study, it found that 67.5% of inmates released in 1994 were rearrested within 3 years, almost exclusively for a felony or serious misdemeanor, and almost 50% were back in prison. A study by the Pew Charitable Trust followed inmates released in 1999 and 2004. For 3 years, it used slightly different methodology than the BJS study, but concluded that recidivism rates have been largely stable. The finding is to be expected given the continued emphasis on warehousing inmates rather than offering meaningful rehabilitation and helping them reintegrate into society. So I'm going to stop here. This is why I don't get through these books so quickly, because I want to make discussions about some of these very powerful powerhouse ideologies. So, integration in society. So, what does that mean? If the recidivism is above 70%, that means society, something is broken and damaged and defective in society, because the environment that is being put into the, we call it field. If you play sports, it's the game. It says play the game. And so when you put inmates into integration, it's putting them back into a matrix, putting them back into a society, a game that has rules and regulations. And it is defective. It's like a personality defect. It's defective for population. It's already marked them. They're not able to be a part of this society. So what happens? They get sent back to prison. I feel sometimes it's like we're building cultures, but we're also building different communities, and not all communities are equal. So there is a community that is like personality A, B, C, D, E, F, and you fit into a certain personality. You are a cluster. Been put into a group, and that group it doesn't fit into the mold of the society, the binaries of society, of their ideologies, just like how the caste system was in different cultures, and now the race system, the construction of race system and the sexuality system, it doesn't fit in the mold of the society and their ideologies and their framework. And that's why we talk about the Constitution and such in societies, not just United States, but we have identified and research and have evidence based science around the way we have created these processes and methodologies for the systems to work. These populations and clusters must be kindred spirits. They must have some level of kin, some energy that can be compatible. And when it's not compatible, it gets kicked out. So it's almost like going into a room of apples, and every time you see a potato or orange, it gets kicked out. It's not necessarily a problem, right? It's just considered as a invasive species, or a species that doesn't flow with or compatible for the group. And it's almost grouping things in compatibility, what is likable, what it fits together. So now you have to delve into change management and diversity management. And what does that mean when I say change management and diversity management? It's because we're an ever changing world. Nothing is new or the same that it was 10 years ago to all the way 100 years ago. Even though there's some systems that move slowly, they're still not the same as it was days ago. They're always changing, just like growth in wine or the growth of a child. Every single day they change, even on a micro level where you cannot see it mathematically. They're changing, just like math changes into an infinite spectrum and continuum. So this is what is happening on a social level in our structures of civilization, civility, and of course, a society that is compatible with kindred spirits, or in the same likeness, in the same image. Diversity is not yet, I'm not going to say it won't happen in the future, but right now it's not celebrating and embraced on a major level. So people that are prone to be put into prison, they have been put into a system that is unjust. It's either an unjust system, or it's a defective system, or it is a problematic system because of two things. One, it hasn't created a ecosystem that is friendly to the planet, right? It's not green zone. And two, it doesn't provide a civilization that is healthy. And this is the problem, because people think punishment means unhealthy systems. When you're punished, you're taken away, stripped from life. That means you don't deserve it, or you haven't earned to be healthy. You haven't earned to be fit. Haven't been earned to be in a clean environment, a healthy environment, a wholesome environment, a loving environment, because you don't deserve it. This is the mentality of tough on crime. That's why they've created capital punishment, because you don't, in this type of mindset, people that are authoritarian, they see in a perspective, in a viewpoint that life is valuable. Therefore, people that do not, I want to say, in kindred spirit, in compatibility, because we notice that it doesn't mean follow the laws. It doesn't mean moral code. It means compatibility, likeness. Because we know there's many people that break the law, but because they got compatibility with people in high places, they don't have to go to prison or be a part of a capital punishment or tough on crime. And so they spend their whole lives doing immoral things or corruptible things, right? And so they have a society that protects them because they're kindred spirit or they're compatible or likable to the people that are in power or in dominance or has authority to protect them, right? So people that are vulnerable, right, that get into a survival mode where they're trying to self-preserve, there's nothing different about them than the ones that are in the kindred communities that getting compatible. They break the law, so does people that's outside break the law. They both have what I call natural responses to their environment, but one has been approved and one's been rejected. And the ones that get cast out into the prison complex are the ones without protection, are the ones without the opportunity to be protected, right? Then that's why it's called vulnerability, under protection or under deserved, because they don't deserve being part of the what I call the it's called the clique, right? Or the societies want to call it the authority of society, the power structures of societies, right? Unless, see, this is where I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the power that came out of Christianity through Christ. It's not just Christianity, but they were also known as mystics that became one with God, their faith, and they proved themselves to be supernatural, super powerful. So they didn't need social resources, social acceptance to be powerful. They didn't need weapons. They didn't need to be violent to kill. They were given something special that set them apart, where they were protected. They didn't need a savior. They didn't need any external forces to grant them dominance. Somehow they were given this internal, infinite, immortal dominance that kept them walking on the planet safe and protected. Some of these people are over history, different religions call them avatars or the messiahs or the Muhammads, the transformative leaders that could walk through time not touched. See, there's two type of invincible people. There's the kind that receive external power, and then there's the other type that receives internal power. Some people might want to call it the righteous versus the wicked, the light against the darkness, right? But it's how you use this power, whether it's external or internal. And so we notice with prisons and law enforcement and policing, and these structures are coming from a negative mathematical system. Like you have atoms, you have the positive and negative, right? Same thing with numbers, you have the negative and positive. So our behavior and conduct is no different. Even in an authority and dominance level of power, you have power that use positive reinforcements, and then you have power structures and dominance that use negative reinforcements. And so it says you know a tree by its fruit. And so when you see these prisons and then they're not healthy environments, they're not providing clean water, clean air, clean food, they're not providing clean ecosystems, they're not providing clean materials to live in. They're not providing a healthy daily routine. They're not providing healthy interaction, communications with authority, with its power, its policing. Then you're in a negative frequency, a negative vibrational environment. So we call this the impact is negative, right? But in our society, we call it tough on crime. We call it capital punishment, right? And this is where you have the Christianity ideology of hell and heaven. Hell was considered the negative reinforcement, tough on crime, just like death. Death was considered a punishment. It was a sentence, just like capital punishment. So if you want to look at it, the beginning of 4 billion years, the capital punishment on humanity was not all humanity, it was just one bloodline, right? And that's the bloodline that is what we know as humanity. And it was given a negative punishment, not a positive reinforcement punishment, but a negative reinforcement punishment. And so we were exiled to this, what they were calling a desert planet at the beginning, right? And this desert planet, this is where we were sentenced to. It was a harsh treatment, discipline as correction, where we wasn't valued enough to live in clean air, clean water, clean food. We wasn't valued enough to be interactive with healthy communications with our species that did not get punished, right? We were put in this world, and death was our capital punishment, our sentence to life in imprisonment. And then there's levels of this imprisonment. And so if we look at it, examine what's going on our society, it's actually a micro evidence of a macro system. And as we transform, it's teaching us how to do good so that we can transform from within. And so here we are still in a capital punishment, negative reinforcement environment on this planet. But yet we have this opportunity and we have this right as well as privilege to change, to transform, and learn to do good on a micro level and on a macro level until death do us part. So if you look at a capital punishment, the life sentence, a death row, these men and women and children live in a negative reinforcement community until death do them part. And they make decision to stay predators, right? To feed off of prey, or they transform and elevate and become to their highest self in that environment to death do you part. And that's how it is on a spiritual level, where we have that same micro to macro ideology that we're in a negative reinforcement. But if you look at it very intently, you can see the positive reinforcement, which is the comforter, the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, the perfect companion. And in the prison system, it is only promised that God will not leave us alone. So he sends good people on this earth to learn to do good. So let's say if he takes out all the good people that learn to do good and do good to others, that is completely removed, then there's only one thing, and that's a negative impact, negative reinforcement. And this whole planet is only living with predators, 100% predators. Now, will that ever happen? According to scripture of Christianity, it will never happen because planet Earth has been spoken for, right? Because there's something special about her. But because of the reality that there's good and evil, dark and light, and how to coexist, there's a transformation that's happening. And that is like a harvest. The wheat is growing up with the other crops, right? So you don't have the separation of all the fruits like apples, oranges, and bananas. They're just all growing together in like a melting pot. So then what happens is now you have this different conclusion of negative and positive. So you have some prisons that's practicing good behavior, meaning healthy environments, healthy ecosystems, healthy food, healthy authorities, healthy people that's interacting, communicating, using healthiness. And this healthiness is not mental instability like you see in a lot of negative reinforcement communities. It's a lot of instability because they don't know how to do what's good. They don't know how to love their neighbors. They don't even know how to love their own children. They don't even know how to love, even though they have all the wealth and riches and power, they don't even know how to love. They don't know how to love themselves. They don't know how to love their children. They don't know how to love their environment, their planet, because what they love is an object, and that is the resources. That is the process of being provided for, right? And so it's absence instead of present. So they're running to a illusion that's not tangible. And so when someone can love someone, they learn to do good, and it's tangible. It becomes action, becomes manifestation, becomes an interaction to one another. But when it's an illusion, it becomes negative reinforcement, negative to interaction, and negative to the planet. So some people's like, how do you know this? Well, look at math. If you take two apples, right, and then you have three people, you have a negative one because there's one person without an apple. See, that's why you can use math as evidence base for a lot of these theories and a lot of these connections or correlations to social conduct and behavior. So if you go into a prison system, right, it's a lose-lose, right? The authorities live in unhealthy environments. The authorities live in unhealthy air, unhealthy water, unhealthy food. They're there for 10 to 16 hours a day. And the impact is negative. So now you have a community that on both sides is lose-lose because they're not interacting with health. Can you imagine if you live in a world of poison, right? You're not going to be able to have clean air. You're going to be breathing in poison. Same thing with prisons and in ecosystems that are highly infested with unhealthiness. They cannot escape unhealthiness You can be healthy, go home and think you're going to take off your clothes and wash off your body and think you're going to be healthy. But if you're in it more, you only have 24 hours in a day. So you're there 8 hours to 16 hours. You're going to what manifest your environment inside of you. And that's why there's high suicide rates among law enforcement. That's why there's high illness, mental sickness in communities that has negative impact, because you cannot produce positivity using negative reinforcements. It's like having negative and a positive. Now, if you have two negatives, as you see in math, you can create a negative positive, like negative 2 minus negative 2 is a negative 4, but it's not a positive. You're just going deeper in the direction of negative, right? You multiply in a negative direction. And that's what happens in prison societies, in ecosystems that have slumlords or have lack of resources because of corruption. Because there's only one thing that's in society when it's a win-lose or lose-lose, and that's corruption. Because you have irresponsible people that is not practicing good technique, healthy technique, because they don't want to interact with people to be healthy. They don't want to have a healthy conclusion because they see healthiness as a valuable, just like life as a value. And so when they take those two things away, they think that they're only taking it away from you. But in reality, they're taking away from themselves as well, because they have to live in the same environment no matter how much of a bubble or how much they run underneath the ground. It's still an impact to themselves. They can't run and hide from it because they're connected to you. And the reason why they're connected to you is like a spectrum. Like when you see math, you're connected on the spectrum. And you're connected on the spectrum because you have to interact. You're codependent to each other or interdependent on each other. So for the person to take and to survive, he has to feed off of you. And if you survive and live, he's taken away from you, but you're taken away from him. And then you both are surviving in a negative impact, which is a lose-lose. But if you guys feed off of the source of God, it's a different output and input. Now you're not feeding off each other, you're feeding off the source and power of God. See, that's the change in the game, right? You're no longer feeding off of each other to live, right? Negative and negative, it produces more negative. See, when the rich feeds off the poor and the poor feeds off the rich, it's a lose-lose. But if they feed off of God, it's a win-win, because God is omniscient. He doesn't deplete. He's a positive force that's always moving forward in positivity. He's not negative. He's perfect in positivity, balance. He's not a day or night creation. He's not an atom, right? He's not created with electrons, right? He is outside of timeline. He's outside of negativity and positivity. He's an infinite pro being, right? Proactive being. And when you connect yourself to him as a source of power, like a battery charging up, you know you're going to have a win-win situation. Whereas if you feed off of each other, it's a lose-lose. And a lot of people can say, no, it's a win-lose. It's not a win-lose. If you're feeding off of creation and you are creation, then there's a lose-lose. It's never win-win. Even if you think you're winning, you're losing. It's a deception because the power source is a negative. So you're doing negative and negative, and it's driving you deeper into negative force. And what happens, we know in a negative force, it's a punishment and not a solution. So today we're going to just break this down a little bit because this is heavy. So I won't be able to speed through this. But for those that want to buy the book, it's the 10th edition. And we're just going to take our time and just try to get to chapter 2. And if we don't get through the book, it's only 4 chapters, but they're so heavy. It's a lot of comprehension, a lot of analyzing and synthesizing and collecting data. And that's why they're called textbooks, because it makes you critically think about what the author is challenging you to explore and discover. So we're going to get back into this chapter because I don't want to go too fast because we got to holistically approach this thing. Even if the author is not focused on holistically dismantling things or building things, we are doing that. And that's what's most important when you're doing coaching. You're breaking down and building up muscles. So you're breaking down, building up social muscles, society, learning how to be civility, learning how to be positive, learning how to be healthy, learning how to be good. What is that? And why is it possible to coexist? Because with a negative or being in a situation that is punishment, reinforcement is positive reinforcement or negative reinforcements. You go back and forth like a swing. And so what happens when you're in an unhealthy environment, a dysfunctional, defective, decaying environment, you tend to decay and be dysfunctional and defective and destructive. So it's a lose-lose. That's why when I say you put up prisons and you think you're going to be okay? Because you're going to be in a society that's dysfunctional, defective, and disabled, meaning your mental disability, right? To perform in a healthy manner, right? How do you think you're going to do? You're going to decay. You're gonna keep perpetuating that to your children, to yourself, to the environment. So that's why you go to different communities, you see a difference, right? And a lot of societies say, well, the rich gets richer. Yeah, they get richer, but is it still healthy? Is it dysfunctional? Is it defective? Is it decaying? Is it decrepit? Is they going through the same things as their counterpart? The difference is they're not in prison, but are they imprisoned in their minds? Are they imprisoned in their self, right? Are they imprisoned in their decision making to be unhealthy? Right? Are they captives? Are they slaves to their own defects, their own corruption? Because if they look at it and on a mathematical level, they're going in the same direction. Lose-lose. There is no winner. Because if you look at it, and this is what I tell people all the time, this is, I'm going off the conversation and lecture to wrap it up. If you cannot resolve the conduct of death, that's the ultimate process of the body separating from the actual living being, right? If you cannot find a way, and this is where a lot of people do man-made stuff. They never want to get connected to the source. They want to do things like create a sleeve and transfer consciousness into different bodies because they don't ever want to resolve the core roots of what is really truly happening on a micro level of your conduct, and then that's your intentions. Even in our society, it says a malicious intention, premeditated intention. It's always focused on an intention. And what is an intention? It's learning who you are completely in totality through the source, not through humanity, not through what you feel is mortality, but what you feel through immortality. See, that's where you start shifting from slavery mentality into incorruptibility. See, a lot of the rich and a lot of people with authority and power, they forget one thing. We're in the same core evidence, and that's separated, disconnected from our creator. Who is that? The source, the battery charger of us as a battery. We cannot continue to think that we're going to feed off of the planet, this terrestrial being, and we're going to have a win-win. We have to feed off of our creator, and that is a personal relationship, having a conversation, interaction, developing. See, we're underdeveloped. We're not getting our nutrients from our creator. We're breastfeeding off of the wrong food, right? The breast, we're breastfeeding off the wrong breasts, right? So same thing what I'm trying to say about the prison system, the legal system, the judge system, this whole concept of systems in our society is we've been negative reinforcement. So we've been going the wrong way. We have never done positive reinforcement because we weren't wired to do so. And we know why we wasn't wired to do so, because we ourselves from the beginning of time have been taught that we were the rejected race, the rejected culture, the rejected living organism, because we were rejected because there was a defect in us, a defect in our personality with God, with our Creator, that He had to reject us and send us in a negative reinforcement. We didn't get a positive reinforcement. We didn't get pampered. We didn't get, a celebration. We got sent out. We got exiled as a human race, right? This bloodline, because we know there's more than one human race. We're not the only human race, but we might as well call ourselves the human race personality A or B, right? And we were the ones in prison. We were the ones encaged. We were the ones sentenced to death on death row. And if you look at it, we've done nothing but the same to each other. So how do we elevate ourselves? How do we break the cycle? We need enough of a collective of us come together to do good, to learn to do good. That means the opposite. See, some people say the best way to know a solution is the opposite of what you're doing, because usually you're doing what is the problem. So you got to do the opposite. So if we're doing prisons, then that means we got to do something opposite, right? Reinforcements, it got to be positive. Let's see how that happens. It has to be healthy. If we're unhealthy, we have to be healthy. If we're mentally unhealthy, we need to be mentally healthy and mentally fit. What does that look like? What is that? We don't even have a rubric, so we have no clue. We're pioneers. We're trying to figure this thing out. We got these books and libraries of all of these journalists and researchers and people that are saying, hey, this is where we did this math. Good luck. So we're the baton relay race. And we have to take all of these learned lessons and hopefully take it to the next chapter until one of these chapters is the finished chapter and we arrive in our highest self and break all these cycles. But we won't be able to do it because we're going to always have a negative and a positive force working in us because we're the harvest. We were put here to know good and evil. So we know both. So to choose good is going to be something that has to be invested. There has to be a reason to propel us to choose to do good, right? So there you are. It says choose life or choose death. Choose what? To do good or choose to do evil. Or here it is, to choose to love, to choose to hate. We are the humans that has been given free will. And because of that free will, we've also been given the right to choose evil or to choose good. Now, the consequences of it is our transformation. Every time we do something evil, according to God's disapproval, we transform internally and externally according to that deed, right? Same thing, if we choose to do good, choose life, it transforms us internally and externally. And our bodies starts to transform into it. We can see our transformation daily, the way our body transforms on the outside, right? People think it's a lack of nutrients, but what if it's a lack of conduct, lack of behavior, lack of ethics, or lack of thought, a lack of conversation with God, a lack of connectivity to God? What if it's something like that, lack of connectivity to God? And that's why we decay. Lack of connectivity to God, that's why we are self-destructive. Lack of connectivity to God, that's why we are destructive. Lack of connectivity to God, that's why we are what? Absent, isolated, captive, slave. Slave to what? That's what the rich people would say. Slave to what? We have everything. Slave to death. That's the ultimate slavery. Is a slave to death. Slave to hell. The slave to be disconnected with God. If God, our creator, is our battery charger, and you disconnect because of independence, you choose to not connect, then you're a slave to that choice. You're a slave to be depleted from your source. No matter how much you feed off of blood, off of food, off of anything, if you're not connected to the Creator, you're not going to transform according to your highest self, your highest potential, which is good, right? Or proactive. So, how can we shut down this season in a timely manner? It's up to us. It's up to all of us. All of us. Every single one. When you think about corporations, you think of stakeholders. It's up to everyone for that corporation to be successful and to have longevity. Same thing with the human race in this terrestrial body, which we call the planet Earth. In order for us to be successful, in order for us to have longevity with Earth, the planet, we need to be connected to God together as a collective, as a corporation, under God. That's why it says, in God we trust, right? Under God we trust, right? We need to be collective. And if we're a collective system that's disconnected to God, we are going to continue the downward spiral to rock bottom over and over and over as an infinite negative reinforcement against God. And a lot of people's like, well, what about some of us? We're loving, we're kind, we're good. You're right. Each of us will be mystically one with God. But think about it. A tree, if a branch falls off, it can survive by itself. You put it in another pot, it grows, another tree, blah, 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 right? But imagine if that branch never fell off and stayed connected to the tree, how much more powerful it would be. Take a time and think about that. Let's end and abolish a lot of these negative reinforcements and let's try positive reinforcements. A lot of people's like, well, that's what we did with the children and look what happened. That's not called negative or positive reinforcements, what we did a generation to the children. We neglected them, ignoring them, and not giving them the opportunity to learn to do good, to learn to be healthy, to learn to be in relationships that are healthy, learn to be intimate in a healthy manner. What I mean by intimate and healthy manner is not the binaries of sexuality, but how to be good steward and responsible of your actions to one another, to the planet, to yourself. Self-care, group care, right? Care ethics, right? Quality care, excellence in practice and work ethics, right? It goes on. Social behavior is nothing more than a mathematical formula, just like how Einstein pulled together the mathematical formula for relativity. I can go on. There's so many excellent contributions in our society that math was the key to evidence-based research. So now we do this again with spirituality. Now we do this again with behavior. Now we do this with conduct. Now we do this with attitude, thoughts, intentions, goals, desires. All of these components and variables, we create a mathematical formula. And then what that means, we will have a tangible process towards healthiness, a rubric, a measuring stick. Some people say we don't want a measuring stick. You don't need one. Self-government is very real. It's a right and a privilege to everyone without cost. That's what we call God-connected beings, created beings. It's those that's created by God that choose. And then God connected created beings are those that have made that choice and never looked back. And they stayed connected to God. And they produce in all seasons as a high performer of excellence, of health, fitness, and wellness, and holiness, and wholeness, and generosity, and the list goes on, right? So may you all be able to arrive in that environment we call heaven on earth instead of hell on earth. We call that a healthy environment on earth. Taking care of the planet, taking care of your neighbors, taking care of your your cultures, Native Americans, all the way to the Afro diaspora, to Asians and Pacific Islanders, to every single community that is not equal or superior. Bringing all of those in a common ground of a win-win. And that is, what are we supposed to do with our behavior? For those that can change, change. Those that cannot change, you will learn to change in time. Until then, all I can say is do your best, transform daily. Some of us have an appointment to death sooner than later, and those that do have to leave early, that have to be in spirit instead of in body, we know the truth now, and there's no turning back. We know now that living organisms are eternal, with or without their body. They're given the right to live. And in that right to live, we have to make a decision with this truth, how we're going to behave. And that goes for everything. How are we going to conduct ourselves? How are we going to interact with all these things? And do we have enough data, information that is comprehended in us to implement what we call proactivity, right? Productivity and high performance, of effectiveness, efficiency, and excellence. All right, now, that's good enough for now, right? This is Coach K signing off. Peace and blessings. One love, much love, and all love. Thanks for listening. Till next time, be safe.